First on our agenda is the minutes of the May 5th meeting. Does anyone have any comments to the minutes? Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have one housekeeping item. In talking with our staff, we're going to try a new procedure where our board receives materials for meetings at least a week ahead of time. So hopefully the Monday before the meeting, because I know the last few months we've been feeling a little pressed for time, getting materials late and wanting more time to review them. So with Steve's help, we're going to try to extend the amount of time we have, and we'll try that and see how it works, make sure that can flow smoothly. All right, thank you. Okay, first on our agenda is final review for 613 West Lancaster Avenue. This is the Couz's Corner property. Is the applicant prepared? Please come up. You can remind everybody where we are. I know we've seen it before. And
so this property is the former Couz's Corner Bar at 613 West Lancaster Avenue, just west of the Curry Hair Salon before the intersection of Old Eagle School Road. It's labeled on A, Building A on this slide. Here's Curry. As you may recall, this is an somewhat unusual situation, and that the parking for, I guess it's 7 properties are essentially sharing the same parking field. There's a parking between the restaurant and the spa, and then this additional lot here, which goes with the Couz's lot, has historically been over time used by these buildings B, C, D, and E, Capelli Taylor, and the yoga place, and all the businesses down that direction. So the last time that we were here, if we can find the right slide, the plan that was before you looked like that. And there was a request, some requests from the Planning Commission to see if we can increase the amount of green space on the site. So up in this corner here in the northeast, there was a parking spot there. There was a request whether that could be removed. I'll show you the updated plan. The answer is it was removed. There was a parking spot here in the middle. The question was, could this be removed to enhance the vehicular movements as well as increase the green space? That was also done. And in general, in keeping with the township's concern about stormwater management, the concern is whether stormwater management could be improved. We were confident that we were improving the situation already because we're reducing the amount of impervious cover on the site. The site's currently 100% impervious, and we were adding various green space in front of the store. This is a proposed cafe. Green space and an island out by a new sidewalk, and an island between here and the spa in this corner. Out in the middle, and in the back, an island was added for adding a parking lot lighting. So so all that green space was added, so we were confident that, in fact, the stormwater management conditions were being improved. Here's an interim plan showing some of the requests the Planning Commission had made, increased green space in this corner, increased size of this island, as well as a reduction of a parking spot. And somewhere in this set of slides, I have the latest plan, which shows the latest addition is underground infiltration basin in this location. This is a rain garden, and the rain garden, some of the water from the rain garden will flow to an underground infiltration basin under the parking lot, which will help infiltrate stormwater. So effectively, this is the current site plan, which has evolved a fair bit in some important ways since you first saw it, and incorporates, I believe, most of your requests.
Thank you. We have a letter from Garrett Fleming. They've reviewed this final application.
Madam Chairman, if I could, Matt Scholes from Garrett Fleming is here tonight.
Thank you.
In lieu of Roger, and he can maybe step you through that.
Great, thank you. Matt, can you take us through the outstanding issues?
Certainly. Outstanding issues. First, we'd like to point out that in the zoning review, the rear yard setback is being increased from its previous dimension, the impervious lot coverage is being decreased to 71.4%. The parking spaces, which varied in range from 7 foot by 15 to 9 by 17, are now going to all be 9 by 17 with a proposed handicap spaces of 8 foot by 17 with an aisle. The stormwater management plan was prepared in part due to test pits that were dug, which encountered rock, and then ground penetrating radar was performed to find the best area for a stormwater management BMP, which was the northeast corner, as is shown there. Finally, if there is to be any increase in wastewater discharge, a sewage facilities planning module must be completed and a highway occupancy permit must be completed to modify the curbing along Lancaster Avenue. All existing proposed utility connections must be shown on the plan. It's been indicated that they will provide permit plans once the architectural plans are further developed. And an easement should be shown on the plan for the construction of the parking island. The easement should include a requirement that the parking island cannot be altered or removed without the written approval of Radnor Township Board of Commissioners. A copy of the easement description must also be submitted for review.
Thank you. Are you satisfied with the way all of these issues have been addressed?
Yes, we are. We believe that the stormwater management has been addressed to the best of their ability.
Thank you. Board comment?
It's a question, actually. The parking spot that is in the upper right corner next to your rain garden.
This one here?
Not the other side of it.
This one?
Yeah. Is there enough room there for somebody to back out and without hitting the car that's in the spot on the other side of it?
Yes, we believe so.
Okay. What is the footage there?
Well, I can see your concern, which is that if you had parking spots that were less than 90-degree angle and you had no separation between them, then you'd have a problem. But this is, I think, I'm guessing it's about 10 to 12 feet there?
It should be more.
Yeah.
It is?
More?
Yeah, more.
Okay.
Our engineer with calibrated eyeball says it's more than 12 feet. So we think there's sufficient room to make the maneuver here.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Well, keep thinking about questions, and we'll go to public comment. All right. Is there any public comment? Please step up to the microphone.
I'm one of the owners of the adjacent building, 617 West Lancaster Avenue. My name is Chris Odoricio, and we're running the time frame of when the building is coming down because we're very concerned because the adjacent walls.
Can you address that, the applicant?
Thank you. Yeah, we would love to do this immediately. The issue for us has been just a series of approval meetings. Beyond here, we have a visit back to the commissioners, as well as we're having some discussion about the sewer capacity as to whether there is in fact going to be required a sewer planning module for putting this, for replacing the existing restaurant with effectively another one. So as soon as we can get the permits, we're going to start.
Okay, but you're not far enough along in the getting all the process done to really know when that would be.
Well, we would have hoped to have started by now, frankly. So I think the biggest issue for us is if we can determine that we do not have to start over with a sewer planning module, then we're just a few months away.
Okay, thank you.
Do you, sorry,
Go ahead, Doug.
do you expect a greater level of sewerage because of the size of the restaurant will increase? I wouldn't think so, but do you expect to have to increase capacity to the?
No. We think this is a crazy result we're running into here. So, in fact, all the review letters don't quite capture what we're doing. The existing building is about 3,600 square feet. It shows up in the review letters at 1,881 square feet because the first floor is 1,881. But the existing building, in fact, has a second floor of about 1,000 square feet and a lower level that was also used in the operation of the business of about 800 square feet. So the existing building was 3,600 square feet used as a bar and restaurant. And we're replacing it with a 2,800 square foot building for cafe use. So we think, if anything, we have a reduction in sewer, and we don't really understand the logic behind a potential requirement for a sewer planning module. So we're trying to work through that on with some discussions with the town.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other public comment? Thank you. Other board questions?
Yeah, I have another one that was actually brought to mind by Mrs. Odorizio. The building and her building, do they have the same party wall?
Well, her building is, I think she said 617, which would be 2 buildings over.
Okay, well, how about the one that is immediately adjacent
Yeah, so
to
we
you?
have a party wall with the 615 West building. That's there where Caranda Mortgage is.
Okay,
And so it is, from a lot line and planning perspective, it's a party wall. And from a bricks in the field perspective,
single.
they're just extra wide. It's 2 brick walls next to each other.
are they 2 walls that were built at different times? Or was it one party wall and all the buildings were built at the same time? The reason why I'm asking this is because I've run into a situation where a neighbor's building was taken down, and we did have a party wall. And it was not properly treated on the side where the building came down, and we got water in the building, and we were concerned with other things. So if that's the case, if you have a single row of bricks or stone or whatever it is between the 2 buildings, what are you planning on doing to maintain the integrity of that wall?
Absolutely. So we're actually, it's a good point you bring up. When you're working next to an adjoining building, you have to be quite careful. So we're actually using what's known as sort of a zero lot line footer. So we're going to actually be building a brand new foundation wall that comes up to the 0 lot line and goes off a brand new foundation. So we're not expecting to utilize the existing foundation that is there. Essentially, we're going to build a new wall. We'll demolish the building, leaving the existing party wall, if you will. It's technically 2 walls, but leaving the existing masonry structure up and build a new wall on a 0-footer just adjacent to it.
And completely sealing the top part where the 2 buildings come together so you don't get water between the 2 buildings?
Yes.
Okay. And I hope the township would follow up with the inspection on that to make sure it happens. Thank you.
Is there any possibility when you say 0 foundation, would you please explain? I mean, are you going to actually have to dig under the existing foundation of that party wall?
No, we don't have to dig under, because actually we have a basement. So the existing foundation is at is 8 feet, 9 feet, whatever that height is, below surface. And what we're building is a new building at grade. So we're actually going to be filling the basement, the existing basement, with the appropriate granular fill material, and then coming up with a foundation at what's, I'd say approximately half the elevation height of the existing basement.
Great, thank you. Is everybody all set? Can I get a motion?
Is that right? Okay.
I make a motion that we approve it with the comments brought up about the township, or not about the township, but the comments of Matt from the township regarding the waivers for the parking stall dimensions and I guess off-street parking is not an issue now, is it?
I think all that was covered.
That was all taken care of completely? Okay.
Yeah, we did that.
All right.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Could you
Okay,
please,
thank you very much.
I would ask of the applicant to make a special effort to coordinate with the neighboring buildings so that they have a sense of the timeline for construction and other activities as soon as you do.
We'll start that right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is, are we doing these together or separately, the schools?
We can do them together if you want.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is an expansion of classrooms for Ithan Elementary School and Wayne Elementary School. Well, I guess it makes sense to take them one at a time. Let's start with Ithan. If you're ready, you can bring that up. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Momney. I'm a civil engineer, and I'm here on behalf of the Radnor School District. This first project is Ithan Elementary School. What is proposed is a 2,000 square foot addition. In the box you can see on the plan is the approximate area where the addition is going to go. The site is approximately 47 acres, and this is just one small portion of it. The purpose of this addition is programmatic. It's not intended to handle additional students. In fact, there's projected decrease in the number of students. So as a result, there is no additional parking that is required. And the reason for the addition is because there's a reduction in students, is to be able to take the students out of the annex, which is shown in this rectangle near the bottom of the plan. And that will eventually be eliminated and the students brought into the new addition.
So will both of the separate buildings be taken down, or just the one further to the back? Like the one where K Club is up in, next to the ball field, is that staying?
They're both staying for now. The intention is to get all the students out of the upper one you just read.
But the buildings will stay, but the students will be moved to the new classrooms.
We would like to remove the building that you just referred to. I'm sorry, Leo Burnaby with the school district.
Thank you, Leo.
We would like to remove the lodge, the building that you just referred to, eventually, once we get the students out of that building.
Thank you. Could you just take us through what the changes are proposed, and then we'll see what questions the board might have.
Okay, what's shown in red on this plan are the portions that will be eliminated. So there's a walkway here, there's a playground, and another walkway which will be reconfigured. What's proposed is a 2,000 square foot addition, some new walkways. This portion of the walkway that forms kind of a V-shaped is ADA accessible. From that point down, which connects to the existing annex building, is just reconfigured existing walkway, and that will not be. There's steps along the way in order to meet the new elevation. In the proposed addition will be 2 classrooms and some other smaller rooms. A corridor will connect the main building to the new classrooms. There is a stormwater management system that will be located in this area here to compensate for the new impervious coverage created by the building. So there is very little disturbance of the site. That's pretty much it, unless you want to get into details on the erosion and sediment control or...
I'm sorry, no, hang on just a second. Matt, did you have anything from the township engineer that you'd like to bring up?
Our main concerns were the off-street parking calculations, which if there aren't going to be any increase in the number of attendees, then the additional parking spaces won't be required. We're going to need percolation test results indicating the limiting zone and the ability for the facility to drain within 96 hours. And also a general note should be added to the plans indicating that a grading plan and erosion and sediment control plans will be submitted and approved prior to issuing any building permits. Any revision to the size or location of the structures or other features will be addressed at that time, and a final approval of the stormwater management plan will be required as part of the grading permit process.
Thank you. Steve, what are we looking for tonight? To do a preliminary or? Hang on.
Can I ask a question while we're figuring that out?
Please.
Okay. Is that a two-level or one level? Two-story?
One story.
One story. Okay, thank you.
Just conferring with the solicitor.
Thank you.
Well, let me, this is a question that always comes up with these small projects. Your ordinance has a preliminary step and a final step. And applicants, sometimes unbeknownst to them, need to request a waiver if they want to do it in one step. So, I mean, I'll leave it up to the engineers, but it seems to me this is a pretty straightforward application. They're going to technically need a waiver to do it in one step, which would then go to the commissioners. Unless there's some reason you want to bring them back for a preliminary then a final, it's really your call in terms of that.
Well, I'm thinking unless something shocking comes up during board discussion or public comment, we could probably take care of both of these tonight. But they would then go through that process with the township of getting the correct waiver. They wouldn't have to come back here because they didn't have a waiver today, right? That could be taken care of separately.
Well, you would recommend approval
We'll
of
just
just doing the
recommend.
one step and waiver as necessary.
Okay.
Yeah. Staff was going to recommend that we go with a preliminary final for both these plans because they're relatively innocuous moving forward.
Okay. Thank you. Staff comment? Questions for the applicant?
When are they looking to do this work?
When are you looking to do
In
the
other
work?
words, is a waiver going to help them to do it sooner so it can be used next year?
Timeframe, construction timeframe.
Timeframe, we're, of course, dependent on grading permit, we're hoping to begin this winter and, if possible, be open for September of 15.
Anything else? Is there any public comment?
We did ask for a waiver of land development. We were hoping that maybe that could be waived.
A waiver on land development?
Yes, the whole process.
The
And
whole-
just come in with a grading permit where we would address these comments.
Okay. Steve, where do you stand on that?
Yeah, I saw the waiver. My thought was they go through the land development process, but it's vastly speeded up by going with preliminary final.
Okay.
And moving along tonight, I mean, I think this could go through this summer relatively quickly, and we could get right on the grading permit process. I don't know if the solicitor has any concern.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment? No. Any further board comment?
I had one question for applicant. The annex building, does that have 2 classrooms in it? Or what does it have in it?
The annex building actually has 8, and we'll continue to use that for use by the Delaware County Intermediate Unit.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
The annex building, the one down low, has 8 classrooms, and we will continue to use that, 6 of them anyways, by the Delaware County Intermediate Unit.
Is that the building that you're going to tear down eventually then? That's not the building, that's the other
The building
building.
that we would like to remove, we term the lodge. That's the one that
lodge,
sits up on the play area, and we won't necessarily tear it down. We'd like to have it removed. It was a modular piece of construction. We'd like to get it removed.
How many classrooms are in the lodge?
6 and 2 full-size restrooms.
You don't need, you shrunk, you don't need all those classrooms.
Well, no, and the community really came to the district and requested what we've wanted all along, and that was to get all the students within the building proper.
Thank you. Any other comments? Can I get a motion?
Before we move on, what would be the difference if we were to waive the land development, or recommend waiver of land development? At this point, they've already completed pretty much everything they would need to submit.
I think it's going to take them just as long either way.
Sorry?
If they go right to final, or if you waive land development altogether, then there's conditions, I mean, nothing will get recorded, typically. A land development plan gets recorded, even a 2,000 square foot extension. There's conditions they're still going to have to meet.
But from the looks of the plans, they're pretty much meeting the conditions that they're going to be required anyhow. Would you say, I mean, I don't think, do you think it's going to save them much to?
I think that going through the land development process makes it documented and official and.
Sure, but I'm saying it doesn't really require much more of the
No.
applicant.
I don't believe so.
Because they've already pretty much.
I
Right.
think it's more of a time issue, if
Okay.
anything. I mean, one more meeting kind of thing.
So is everyone pretty much
But I think Steve.
on the same?
I think Steve said that he would recommend the grant of the waiver to wrap preliminary and final together, but not waive land development.
Right.
Okay.
Is that good for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. So who wants to make that motion?
Yes. I make a motion that we approve this development in terms of granting a waiver combining preliminary and final together, but that the applicant goes through land development in the normal course.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Next. You didn't want to do all 3 elementary schools at once? Just-
This is the overall site plan for Wayne Elementary School. Shown in yellow color is the proposed addition, and this U-shaped building is the existing annex, which is proposed to be removed. And this one will be removed as part of the project. This plan shows the items that are to be removed, which is the annex building and a section of walkway. The proposed addition is shown in yellow here, and a section of the walkway will be reconstructed. There's a stormwater management system associated with this, and in this case, you can see some X'd out trees that are going to be impacted because of the addition. On the Ithan project, there was one tree, I believe, but this has several other ones. It's pretty straightforward. If you would like more information on the addition itself, then the architect is here and he can explain that.
I think that's fine. Comments or questions from the board?
How many it's a classroom addition, is that correct?
Yes, the classroom and other functional rooms.
How many classrooms are you putting in there? It's a matter of my interest.
I'm Darren Jellison with Blackney Hayes Architects. So you can see 1, 2, 3 full-size classrooms, and then a series of smaller SGI type spaces for special education and things.
Thank you.
How many classrooms in the U-shaped modular building that's being removed?
There are currently 6, one of which is currently unused, 2 of which are used for what we call an extended day program or K-Club program. That program will be, the K-Club program will be removed with the implementation of full-day kindergarten next year, and the before school and after care will be moved inside, potentially to one of these empty classrooms, but it could also be the cafetorium before and after school, so that none of them will be needed.
In your projections, are you thinking that Wayne will go up in enrollment, stay the same, or go down?
We actually had a survey completed recently by the Pennsylvania Economy League that shows a relatively significant decline in student population across the district. But just the same, we're planning for those hills and valleys that we see in student enrollment, and we think that this will help the flexibility within that building. Again, what this does is it brings all the students inside the building proper.
I have a question for you, please, over here, the far left.
Yes.
There's a letter dated May 28th that there's some conditions through zoning, stormwater management, and general comments that there's still some inconsistencies. Are they aware of the letter of inconsistencies, the one dated May 28th from Roger? Probably not, okay. There's one note that there's an inconsistency in the total amount of impervious coverage on the property. That Plan Sheet 2 indicates that there's a new increase, but that Plan Sheet 5 indicates that there's a decrease. And there's some other questions on there about that. Can we address those comments as well? Okay.
Sure. I don't know exactly why there's the confusion, but the new addition is 7,158 square feet. The building that's being removed is 6,331 square feet. And then various walks and patios and things, which amount to 33,210 square feet, are being removed as well. So there's a net decrease of 2,383 square feet.
Okay.
Yes, I have a question. Over here. With the introduction of full-day kindergarten, and from what I've heard, there's quite a few, of course this is hearsay, I've heard that there quite a few children have signed up for that. Do you have enough classrooms to handle all the full-day kindergartners?
We do. I brought some numbers with me in case you asked that question, and these classrooms in particular won't be intended specifically for full-day kindergarten, but they'll help with the flexibility with the balance of the building for us to be able to facilitate that. Currently, these are May 30th enrollments. There are 51 K students at Ithan. We anticipate 52 in full-day K. Because we will get an increase because of the interest in full-day K, but a slight decrease in the overall population. Radnor Elementary School, we see a significant decline, or at least if we follow PEL numbers, Pennsylvania Economy League numbers, we anticipate a significant decline in kindergarten numbers. And Wayne itself goes from 70 and has a slight uptick to anticipated 76. We don't know kindergarten enrollment numbers until mid-August. Everybody comes in and picks up a packet, but like most of us parents, we kind of, wait till we're settled in or buy a home or whatever to actually register the student. But we've anticipated the higher end of the range of enrollment possibilities in designing our planning for next year for full-day K.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? Is there any public comment? Please come up. Please come up to the microphone. Just state your name and your address.
Okay, my name is Sohaila Mahboubi. We are at 599 Valley Forge Road.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't know whether there was a time to, I don't know exactly where is the new addition. Is it because we are backing the school?
Okay.
Is it possible to show?
Could you show her maybe on the plan and show the rest of us as well the layout and explain for people who don't read plans all the time what we're looking at?
Where is the Valley Forge Road?
That's Maplewood and Wayne Avenue. There's an area diagram here. I don't know if that helps you. Here's the site.
Do you have the aerial?
Thank you. Yes.
Take a look at the aerial. That might help.
them every morning.
You hear the noise from the school, yeah, of
No,
course.
when they have a flag day.
Okay.
At the graduation.
Okay.
So if you're adding the tradition, right?
No, this is being removed. The addition will be put here.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, you're very welcome. Thank you. Any other public comment? Anything else from staff? Any outstanding issues?
No, Madam Chairman, we would just recommend the same process, that it be preliminary final, but keep the applicant in land development for no other reason that it's a much cleaner process with better documentation, and we're of the thought that it's not going to take any additional time for the applicant.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? Can I get a motion?
I was going to ask, saying there's no reason for a transportation study, right? All right.
Ready? I'd like to make an extremely similar motion that we waive the requirement that there be both a preliminary and final, and that, however, the process still continues through land development.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, next on our agenda, ordinance number 2014-03. That's the stormwater ordinance. Okay, we've been looking at this. Who's going to take us through?
I'd like to introduce it, Madam Chair, and I'll pass it over to Matt, if that's okay.
Thank you.
So we brought this to the board's attention, and through Gannett Fleming, we had an ordinance amendment. We brought it to the board originally, the Board of Commissioners. They had directed us to provide it to Delaware County Planning Commission, Radnor Township Planning Commission, and the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee. And we took all the various comments from each group, which, by the way, they found very helpful as opposed to just an up-down vote. They very much liked seeing your actual comments, so they got a feel for what the commission thought about the ordinance amendment. We took all that back, and at the last meeting, they said, that's great, we'd like to have some very specific changes, which they gave us direction on. They were done by Roger, and then we were instructed to go back to Delaware County Planning, our Planning Commission, and Stormwater Management Advisory Committee. So they're being sent to the Delaware County Planning Commission. Stormwater Management Advisory Committee meets a week from Thursday, and you're here tonight. And what I would respectfully request is, whether you have a recommendation or not, they thought it very helpful seeing, just a few bullets of each of your comments. They found that a good way to get a look at things. And we did the same. I took that to Stormwater Management Advisory Committee and used that same process. So it seemed to be successful. I will now pass you over to Matt Scholes from Gannett Fleming.
It's getting shorter.
Okay, the stormwater management ordinance, we went through and took a look at some of the stormwater management points. Number one, we're going to throw in as part of our purpose to utilize green infrastructure and low-impact development design and practices to promote infiltration, evapotranspiration, and reuse of stormwater. With the onus on property owners to utilize infiltration and put in stormwater BMPs, it's also important to use green infrastructure. While sometimes people can forget that green infrastructure can be used in these situations, we feel that as the engineering department, it's a benefit to the township to promote these types of BMPs. As far as the groundwater recharge, we're going to be altering parcels exceeding 3.01 acres of gross area. The retention or infiltration volume will be equal to capturing 1 inch of rainfall over the surfaces of the entire parcel, maximum extent technically feasible. And then the net 2-year approach on parcels with a gross area of 3 acres or less, the 2-year approach will remain.
Well, are you saying that we're removing that suggestion now? Is that what's going on here?
Yes, I believe we are. That one was,
That's correct. That was one of the ones that the board wanted us to remove. So really, what you have here, what Matt's explaining, is we already have groundwater infiltration in the existing ordinance. So really what you're looking at in the change in a nutshell is still the request to utilize green infrastructure and a reduction. The original request was for the entire site, went back to meadow. So now it's just 25% of the existing developed area, which is more in line with some of the comments we had received from the various commissions. And the 1 inch over the entire 3.01 acres is now not part of this amendment.
that was considered too stringent. Also, there was a comment to use 1 inch over all new impervious surfaces, which is already covered in, it's already covered in a site under 1,500 square feet of additional or new impervious. And then 15 and over, it's covered in water quality for an equivalent amount. So that would have been a redundant portion of this. And let's see here. Yes, and then the last part, as Steve was explaining, the 25% of the existing impervious would be considered meadow. Sometimes what happens on large developed lots is that when you run your 2-year difference, because you have existing impervious and it's substantial impervious, and then you have new impervious, which is slightly less, but still substantial impervious, they end up meeting almost a null value and not having to do anything to meet the post versus the pre-requirements. So in order to have substantial stormwater management done, making the pre 25% meadow would make the applicant take an existing overly developed lot and do stormwater management to make it more in line with lots that are being developed now from a meadow or an undeveloped status.
Thank you. So for tonight, we would be looking to put together our comments in just a few bullets, whatever, on this updated version to get back to the commissioners.
Preferably, with all due respect, would request that
Please.
you would do your up-down vote on a recommendation or a denial, or a recommendation of denial, and along with your bullet comments, if that would be okay.
Okay, board.
I have a
questions,
question.
comments?
Our stormwater ordinance, are any of the post-development storms required to be reduced beyond the existing?
Yes, they are. The rate reduction, well, the stormwater ordinance is divided into 4 distinct stormwater drainage basins, all of them which have varying degrees of reduction. All of them at least reduce through, I believe, the 2 to the 1, and many of them have decreases such as the 100 to the 10-year pre. So there is rate control, which decreases it beyond what it currently is in place already.
This particular one that was, even though we did this prior, we're really only looking at 3.01 plus acres for this. So in other words, the stormwater is not going to change the under 1,500, the under 500. We're still applying 1 inch to that.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Okay.
But the 25% meadow that's not restricted to 3 acres or more. That's for all redevelopment. That the 1 inch that's been removed, that 1 inch over the entire parcel, that was where you were talking about 3 acres or more. Now we're back to everything.
Oh, I thought it was 25% only exceeding 3.01 acres.
If you look at the ordinance number 204-03, So the crux of it is in the purpose B and the calculation methodology. So really, everything that was in the previous one went away. Now you're just looking at, for redevelopment sites, the ground cover used. So the 3.01, the 1-inch infiltration over the 3.01 acres has been removed because, as Matt said, we do have infiltration requirements in the existing ordinance, so it would have been somewhat redundant. So really, we're just concentrating on one item, and that's the meadow. They're taking it back to meadow, which was one of the suggestions I believe Regina had.
Now, is
So-
sorry.
So our question is, at what point does that 25% apply? Not under 500, not under 1,500, not till you get to 3.01 acres, or is that incorrect and it's going to apply to everybody who's redeveloping?
It's going to apply to everyone over 1,500 as rate control is only used for 1,500 and greater.
Well, Regina, we're
I
kind of
guess my
relying on you here.
question is, are we back with the original language? We're just changing the 25? Because in the original markup, we had replaced, is it for development and redevelopment, or is it just for redevelopment?
It would be for development and redevelopment.
Because the original one was just for redevelopment.
That's what this says.
It is just for redevelopment.
Okay. So for redevelopment of any size lot, as long as it's required to have stormwater management, obviously if it's small enough, the work is small enough that it's not required under, it's 1,500 in Radnor, that's not going to apply.
The 1,500 square feet is within what new or additional impervious you're putting down. It doesn't have anything to do with your lot size.
Right, but if you have less than 1,500 square feet, this doesn't apply because you're not doing stormwater management.
You're not doing the rate control, that's correct. Once you go over 1,500 square feet of new or additional impervious, then rate control kicks in as one of the stormwater ordinances, and this applies to rate
Anything
control.
above the
Yes.
1,500, cumulative 1,500 on a site.
Yes.
So we're talking about any redevelopment that exceeds 1,500 square feet in impervious cover.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I guess my only concern is looking at the reductions that are already required and then coupling this on top of them. Do any of them become onerous to the point where we need to look at that? Do we need to only put these on certain areas, or? Because
From a staff standpoint,
are there any particular requirements that this is going to
make
have a
it too
problem?
onerous?
Yeah.
No. From a staff standpoint, we did not think so, and that's why, the question had come up with the original ordinance amendment as it was, that it could become onerous, if not redundant, with what we had in there, and that taking the entire site back to Meadow, it was brought up that that could be considered very onerous for certain sites, and 25% was one of the suggestions. I think we heard that a couple of times, which is one of the reasons we went with that. I personally, not speaking for the rest of staff, I don't feel that this is too onerous. There's other municipalities where the Meadow condition is more restrictive. I think this is a good start. As we stated to the board, Gannon Fleming is already working on the stormwater ordinance rewrite, if you will, the full-blown change, which is going to be presentations in front of this commission, stormwater management advisory amongst the Board of Commissioners and others. So this, I think we should look at this for what it is. It's a short-term stopgap measure for development moving forward. And when we come back in with the rewrite, that's when, we'll be looking at every line and presenting that to you and getting your comments in that respect. I don't think this is too onerous. And again, I think we should look at what this is. It's a short-term vehicle.
Okay.
Steve, Yeah, you said that other commissions suggested this, and I don't recall us suggesting the 25%, but
I believe one of the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee members, which may have been Regina because she's on both. She does double duty.
well, from staff's standpoint, especially in the context where you don't think it's too onerous at 25%, is that a number that you like, or would you like to see 40% or something like that?
Again, speaking for me, I was a fan of taking the entire site back.
Okay.
But I think if this gives a comfort level to the Board of Commissioners and the Planning Commission, again, for the short term, while we do the rewrite of the ordinance over the next several months, maybe a year, I don't know how long that'll take, I think this is a fine method to just move forward in.
Now, can I ask you, just so I understand how this works? I mean, I'm a numbers person. Suppose you have a site that is 1 acre and it is completely covered with blacktop. Then they decide to redevelop the site. Does that mean they have to we have to consider 1/4 of that acre now to be pure meadow when they redevelop it, even though the net would be a net reduction? Do I understand correctly, or is it only if the net coverage is being increased by 1,500 square feet? I don't understand.
The way that the ordinance is written is that any new or replacement impervious is considered new. So if you were to remove the blacktop, put down any sort of impervious coverage, then when you're running your rate reduction calculations, your pre-conditions would be 3/4 of the site would be considered impervious, and the 1/4 would be considered meadow. So even if they are reducing, depending on how much they're reducing, the development would still require stormwater management to bring it back down.
And that impervious coverage could simply be a building. In other words, cutting a hole in a parking lot and putting a building in the middle, then they'd have to take that 1/4 of that entire site, 25% back, do the stormwater calculations as if that was pure unadulterated meadow.
Yes, that's correct.
I have one more
I'm an electrical
question.
guy.
I have one more question for you.
Sure.
I understand that it kicks in at 1,500 when rate control, but is there a minimum lot size that this applies to? Is that the 3.01?
No,
Is this going to apply to everybody?
I think everybody's confused. The 3.01 from what we originally suggested, that's not even part of this ordinance.
Okay. So this biggest impact, it's going to have the biggest impact on some of the people who just, they're either redeveloping a bigger site, because a lot of people don't really add 1,500 square feet of impervious right now. Most of them seem to be pretty small, but the problem is if we go much above the 25% reclaimed, then the stormwater systems get so big that it becomes where are we going to house them?
Yes, that's part of the concern, is that the 25% rate reduction, it should be used on sites, and by the writing of this ordinance, it's used on sites that have, the rate control becomes an issue when you have an overdeveloped lot. Typically, from a lot that's a regular building lot, the 2-year difference in storage volume is going to be what controls you, what controls the sizing of this. When the rate reduction becomes an issue is when you have an overly developed lot, just because of the way that the ordinance is written. If you have an overly developed lot, the 2-year difference is small because you're not changing what was pre and what is post as much as a blank lot. So this is really to make sure that the rate control is something that is substantial to a lot that's already been developed and remains without stormwater controls at all.
Now, one other minor question. Suppose that you owned a very small lot that had a very modest house on it or something like that, and a driveway and perhaps pavement in the back and a small garage, and that constituted impervious coverage was 75-80% of the entire lot. Just by taking up that, taking up a portion or of the pavement or modifying that in some way, the whole thing would kick in, even though the lot itself might be very, very small. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's based on your square footage, not a percentage of your square footage. It's if you're removing 1,500 square feet, it doesn't matter if it's a 10-acre lot or if it's a quarter-acre lot. If it's 1,500 square feet, then the rate reduction would kick in, as would stormwater controls.
Thank you.
Okay.
I guess I have a concern about how this would work in some of the areas where we have these significant reductions already within our ordinance. I think it's fine for District A, but in District, I guess it's B2 is where I have my main concern. We're reducing the 50-year storm to the 10-year. So your proposed conditions, the 50-year storm has to discharge the amount in the existing 10. So it's already kind of having that built into it. What we're trying to do with the 25% meadow is kind of the same thing that we're trying to do with that reduction. So I'm good with District A. I'm a little concerned about District B1, but I'm more concerned with B2 and making that, like Elizabeth was saying, such large facilities that it doesn't make sense anymore. So how do we protect ourselves against going beyond what we're intending here? As far as I see it, this is not one of the things you can request a waiver from. This is the stormwater ordinance. This isn't something you could request a waiver from.
Yes, you can.
How does that, can you explain how that works?
Well, the way I've seen it work, and I think it's happened in this township on certain projects where it is onerous or there's an inability to meet the strict requirements of the ordinance in terms of what you would have to do under the stormwater ordinance. So there's an alternative that the developer presents, and I think the commissioners on Enrico, wasn't there a sort of a waiver on Enrico Partners?
Yeah, I believe it was, and it's always to also what is technically feasible. So so you have the two options.
Should that language be in here, in this section? Because the thing is, we don't see stormwater. So you can't recommend a waiver for this requirement because that's done after we see it. It's part of the grading.
It wouldn't come to this board. It would go
Right,
to the,
so
it would
we
go
don't
to the Board
even-
of Commissioners,
So,
and they would grant the waiver or not.
and their technical expertise in stormwater management will provide them. No, I'm just saying, I don't know how that works as far as combining those two on top of each other in District B1, B2. I don't know if anyone else wants to weigh in on that. Are you familiar with those
Well, I can see the problem
reductions
that you're saying
required?
that in some of the districts, it seems like a pretty good fix. In others, it seems to be overemphasized because of the redundancies.
And I understand this is an interim solution.
Also, I had a question about that. I know that you're at the beginning of the process for the new stormwater ordinance. In your mind, when is that likely to happen? Like, is this interim for 10 years, or is this interim for 6 months? Or
Our goal, realistically speaking, knowing that, there's going to have to be presentations to various boards, to the public, and then various iterations once it goes. It can conceivably take a year. That's what we're thinking.
Because I think a little bit of what I'm thinking about when I hear from Regina is that, yes, we like the direction that this current ordinance is going, but it's not perfect, and there are lots of things we could tweak, but we don't want to take this, we're not going to rewrite the stormwater ordinance with this piece of paper.
That's correct,
This
Madam
is
Chair.
a temporary thing. I'm comfortable with that, but I don't know if we think we've gone far enough with what we're working with today, even though we know it's not going to be perfect until we get the new stormwater ordinance. And I'm kind of relying on you as our in-house expert.
If that's the case, that in those situations where you cannot find a feasible solution, how does that process work? Who do you go to? How do you show that? What are the criteria? What is the process? I'm trying to develop this property, and I'm in B2, and I can't make it happen. What do I do?
Well, the way it works practically, if it's a subdivision or land development, it's going to be in front of this commission. And the developer, the builder is going to say, it's not feasible technologically to do what the ordinance requires, and they're going to look to you as part of your subdivision land development review to grant them some relief or make a recommendation to the commissioners.
And the
If
first
it's-
step we do is when an applicant says it's not technically feasible, we don't just say, okay, we're good. We have them prove to us what they can do. And our first response is always, we're going to have you meet as much of this ordinance that is technically feasible. And where does that take us amongst things in that order? Beyond that, we're going to ask them what else they can do that is technically feasible, whether it be BMP, best management practices, or whatever. So, and then that does go to the board. Staff does not have the ability to waive that. That would just be something we would review and present.
It's not a subdivision or land development, that would still have to go to the board. You know, a modification, because the grading permit would not be issued. There'd have to be some relief. It's pretty common.
But they can still do that even if they don't go through land development?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Regina, I just have a comment that just, something that I experience regularly that I just want you guys to understand or I hear. You know, I know that when the developers come in and they've got the more time and money in the pockets than your everyday homeowners generally, they can, I think a lot about the homeowner that lives on a half an acre in Radnor Township that wants to make improvements to their site. And there's some tough things to get around. I mean, I definitely agree with stormwater management. We all see in the township why we need stormwater management. But, you know, one of the things that goes on is that you can't exchange anymore. So in other words, if you have a blacktop and you want to put a deck down, it's not an exchange of impervious anymore. So that was a hard hit to homeowners. I mean, that all of a sudden they started doing impervious, stormwater management for something that really was still not a building area. Maybe it was, a new deck over an old driveway or something. You couldn't exchange it anymore. And so what happens is where a lot of people are still under 500 and weren't having to do too much besides general good practices, they were getting into stormwater pits. And then those who were in stormwater dry pits between 500 and 1,500 were then being moved into these rate controls. And so I'm not saying I disagree with stormwater by any stretch because I understand it, but I do think that it's tough because it's expensive, and the systems that go in at $1,500 compared to what goes in at $1,499 is extensive. I mean, we're talking going from $6,000–7,000 to $30,000+. So it's a really big jump, and it's a hard hit for a homeowner, especially if they look at their plot and they see, well, heavens, I'm only putting on 400 square feet of building area, but I got to get my driveway to it. I mean, or I'm going to put a garage in because my home never had a garage, but it's over 500 and I got to get a driveway to it. Like, it's amazing the financial hit and how it doesn't allow people to always improve their homes. So I don't know if that has anything to do with this today, except for the fact that sometimes the smaller homeowners, the smaller properties, and the homeowners are just trying to make minor revisions get pretty hard hit by this. So I want us to be cognizant of that.
No, I agree with you, and I think that that's something as a planning commission especially, we have to look at not just the big developments that come in, but the whole big picture, which includes what is the onus what is the responsibility of the homeowners. I think everyone here knows, we're excited that we're going to be having better stormwater control in the township, and we're looking forward to it, but at the same time, we're worried about our neighbors, and we want it to be fair. I think that if we go into our review of the new stormwater ordinance and keep that fresh in our minds, that's the place to address that and to see where we can, it's a balance, to find the right balance. Yeah. I don't see something here that specifically addresses that. No, okay.
No, I agree 100% with Elizabeth, and that's part of the reason why I'm concerned about going too strict, because it will apply to everyone on everything over 1,500 square feet of impervious cover. So if it's a grading permit, and it is something that you can still request a waiver from, and then that's different than what I thought what was happening here. I thought that, if it's in the stormwater ordinance, it's a requirement, not something to be waived. But also, that brings up another point. If Gannett Fleming's revising our stormwater ordinance, it needs to start with suggestions from the Planning Commission and people from the community, I think, because
at what stage in the process?
That's exactly the perfect example. That's what I think has to go out of our stormwater ordinance, what you just cited.
What Gannett will do, and I agree with Regina, very much. We definitely need comments, but we do need a starting point. It's very hard to go in with a blank slate and just say, here's all these different dots that we would like to do, up, down, lower, yes, no. So what they'll do is put something together based on reviewing other ordinances, looking at best management practices, and then present that as a starting point. So that could, by the time something gets approved by the Board of Commissioners, the end product may look very little like what was presented, but they will present something. And then I think it's easier to edit than create. So we're going to let them do some creating of a new ordinance and then let everybody go in and edit. And then you have a baseline. So we're not starting at some infinite or some unknown point. We'll have the baseline, and then everybody can say, this is too strict. This, you know what, rate control, we need to deal with it differently, or volume control, we need to deal with it differently. But we'll present something to the boards. And like I say, I mean, it's going to be a process, and it's going to go through boards and the public, and it'll be going back. So I think everybody will have many, many bites at that apple. And I wouldn't be too concerned over, you know, starting from scratch. Let's let our engineers, you know, present to this commission, to the Board of Commissioners, to the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee, to the public, and then everybody can make edits, changes, to, you know, eventually it ends up in front of the Board of Commissioners. But I think that will be a good way to start the process.
So in other words, just general comments like, and I'm just going to throw one out there, so just in case I miss the opportunity later, our ordinance, when you go on to the website and you want to design a stormwater system, they do a really great job of showing you how to do a basic dry well, for instance. Well, there's a lot more ways to do best management practices than dry wells. And sometimes they're not as invasive as digging up half your yard to percolate a test and then, you know, have so much silt fence out there. The next thing you know, your disturbed earth area has gotten pretty big. You know, rain garden design, rain barrels, things like that. That would be really nice if maybe they could put some of those out there and already pre-designed for people so that we can use them more regularly instead of having to reinvent the wheel every time we want to put them out there. I think people will be more likely to bite at, okay, I'm going over 1,500, but guess what? I don't have to dig up 3/4 of my yard to put it in.
I think
can
that's
use
a
rain
great,
garden.
I mean, I'm the liaison to the Shade Tree Commission. So one of our big concerns is when we require stormwater management, how many trees are we taking down to install the stormwater management? So we want to try to be as cutting edge as possible. We want to try to be as thoughtful as possible. And if there are other ways, that's the way to do it. So we don't want to take what is forest, denude a piece of it, put in a stormwater management system that, you know, we lost, literally, we can't see the forest for the trees. So I think that's a great suggestion. And I think when everybody gets their copy of the draft ordinance, we'll be looking for everybody's comments. They will go back to Gannett. It's going to be a process. I mean, and it's not going to be a quick process.
Before we continue, let me just check, is there any public comment on this item?
Hi, I'm Alex Tweedy with Nave Newell. I'm a civil engineer who has multiple clients in the township. I spoke at the Board of Commissioners as well concerning this. And I guess my big concern in listening to the discussion is just to really understand what's trying to be accomplished with this code. And what I hear is trying to be accomplished and what I see is written on the amendment don't match up from my interpretation, how it's going to apply to a lot of jobs. A lot of this stuff spoke, the basis for this revision was to address deficiencies in the existing code as people think they exist today. And it seems the biggest concern that people view in the code today is for volume control, for infiltration control, like was stated. If you have existing impervious and you don't increase that impervious, you get to count all of it in your calculations. So your change in your 2-year runoff, as was stated, can be 0 or can be negative as long as you're not increasing your impervious. Therefore, you could, in theory, redevelop a site and not have to do any infiltration. That's volume control. in no case outside of Stormwater District A can you get away with redeveloping a site and not having to do extensive peak rate control, which is your large detention basins. And that's a result, as Regina mentioned, you have the 4 districts, B1, B2, and other, have extensive reductions. You know, in the B2, you're up to 50-year down to a 10-year. That's a very extensive peak rate reduction district. So, as was stated before, you don't really need the meadow assumption in that district because you're already doing a 50 to 10 reduction. But you could need stronger volume control in that district because there's 2 different sides to stormwater. There's peak rate control and volume control. The way this ordinance is written, it says for redevelopment sites, the ground cover used in determining the existing conditions flow rates for the developed portion of the site shall be based on actual existing conditions with the exception that 25% shall be considered meadow in good condition. Flow rates speaks to peak rate control, not to volume control. So the way this is written doesn't seem to actually do what you want it to do. Because if this change happens, I don't think you have to change the way you do your infiltration calculation at all. I think flow rate should be removed and runoff volume should be put in its place. You know, as an engineer, I believe your peak rate control is sufficient and always been, and agree with Regina that in a B2 district, if you add another 25% meadow on top of this, it becomes very onerous very fast. But you get more benefit by trying to tackle the deficiencies in the volume control portion of your ordinance, which could lead to a large detention basin, which just worries about peak flooding during a 50-year event, which rarely happens, versus volume control. The benefit of managing volume control is 90% of all rainfall events are usually in that 1 inch or under 2-year storm event. So the goal of recent stormwater control, you know, a change from 15, 20 years ago, is manage all the really small storms because they're what happens every single day. Don't design these huge systems for a once-in-a-lifetime event that the small storms blow right through and you get no control because they're designed for a 50 or 100-year storm. Your ordinance already does a really good job of those large storm events. You know, and this is all kind of excluding the District A, but if you actually look where District A is, that's a heavily residential district. So I'm not sure you guys even want to burden District A with stronger controls for, you know, the concerns that were already stated with the burden to the existing homeowners. But, you know, if you focus more on the volume side, it brings your ordinance up to speed with the state manual for the MPDS permits and the current BMP manual. And I think the basis for the 25% was the current state is 20, so it's a little bit stronger than the current state regulations. But my big concern is the way it's written is kind of taking this change down the wrong path and not really resolving the deficiency that people believe does exist in your ordinance today. And, you know, I don't personally think you should have any meadow change to the peak rate districts because you already have the peak rate control reductions, which do the job for you, but you'd get some benefit out of putting it in the volume control.
Thank you. Board comment? Obviously, we all have some concerns. We don't think this is perfect, but we could either make a recommendation that, you know, we could recommend that this be approved and put in some concerns that we have as bullet points for discussion. For instance, we'd want to make sure that, well, it's already existing, that people can go for waivers if they're a homeowner and if this is too onerous to them. That's already built into the system.
I have a question, or a comment, actually, if you don't mind.
Please.
Since they're looking for comments, the Board of Commissioners, can we just add a comment that we're very concerned about what this would do to the homeowner that would like to put a porch on, since you no longer have the trade-off between a deck and driveway and
Right,
so
so
forth.
small-scale residential improvements.
Right. And if there could be a simplified way for a waiver, so they don't have to hire an attorney, go before the Board of Commissioners, or whoever they have to go before, if it's a simple application, and the staff could approve it, basically. Because I think right now we have so much that we put homeowners through to take a tree down, to fix a garage, to fix up their house. You know, things that you really wouldn't think about, but once you look at some of these rules that we have, it takes a long
hard.
time to get the approvals and everything. And I think a lot of people, first off, have no clue about what they have to go through. And then once they see it, they might think, well, maybe, do we really want to do this?
Yeah,
You know,
and it
maybe
seems
we should
overwhelming,
just
I'm sure.
move.
And then I think we could also perhaps have a comment, just a comment saying that, you know, we're looking forward to working with the engineers in the very early stages of the development of the new stormwater.
Just to give them thoughts of, for example, the concerns that Elizabeth made and also Regina. I know nothing about stormwater retention.
Well, isn't
so-
it nice that Regina's here?
Yes.
Yeah.
But if we have to listen to this ordinance and make comments on, other than the fact you need to watch out for the homeowner, we need some training on it so that we know what we're talking about with it.
Well, they're not
Because
asking
we
us to
really
be the
haven't-
engineers. They really
I know,
are,
but
we're
if
supposed to have a
they're
very
ask-
specific point of view.
If they're asking, I have no point of view. I read this stuff. It was
Okay.
like Greek.
Okay.
You know? I haven't looked at, does anything make sense here? No, it doesn't, because I have no background in that. Building, development, that much I understand. Stormwater management, you might as well be talking Greek to me and writing in Greek for all that means. So I can't make,
So Steve, can we pass that on to you, that we would like to have fairly soon a workshop for the board and whatever other boards in the township would benefit from that, for someone to take us through the basics of what all that stuff is in the stormwater.
We could
plan.
do a Stormwater 101.
Exactly.
That would not be a problem.
We may need 101B too, I don't know.
And at least
Or
that would get you
0045.
familiar with the non-engineers, get you a little more familiar. And I think you made a good point. You know, we're not asking the planning commission to get into every detail, but if we are able, or you are able to discern, or we are able to explain the effect or what this would mean to a developer, to a point, because there's a certain amount of creativity upon the civil engineer who's doing design, okay, as to what they can do, to a point. But if you remember, the last ordinance we proposed did have infiltration. It was a volume reduction, but it was over the whole site. So that was considered onerous. So there's going to be a fine line we're walking on what the gentleman who stood up from Nave Newell and what we're moving forward between the volume and rate control. But I think a 101 and a 101B would be great. And it's also, the staff needs to explain this to the Planning Commission and other boards in a manner that is understandable by the layperson when it comes to stormwater.
and I'm actually wondering how much the Board of Commissioners knows about this subject, because I could be wrong, but I don't
Well, they're not
think
all engineers.
any of them have an engineering background.
I don't know.
Well, since we just have recommendations and not,
Yeah.
I mean, it's.
And could you be
sometimes they
sure
get
to
overlooked.
also schedule that meeting on a rainy day so that we get that full impact?
I offered to pick up any of the planning commissioners on the severe rainy day events to show you what's really going on. It's very interesting, but we will do that. And just so you know, the Stormwater Management Advisory Committee, of which Radina is a member, which I'm a liaison to, does have civil engineers on it. So I think there's
But
3 or
maybe we need to
4.
listen more to what they say rather than us just winging
But
it.
there's two very distant, when I look at stormwater, I look at the large commercial redevelopment sites. I look at it from the standpoint of the development for large home properties like in Ardrossan or something. And then you look at it for the kind of the smaller R districts that, you know, what most of the properties in and around Wayne, you know, the ones closer to town that just don't have that kind of space. And I think that's a whole different type of stormwater management. And sometimes the trees occupy, like you said, more property than is even available to put a system in. So those are the ones I worry the most about, because they seem to get really hard hit with what was supposed to be just a small little project turned into a massive amount of special exceptions and things, so.
Understood, and that will be made known as they start their work.
From my perspective, 90% of my grading permits that I see, and I see almost every grading permit that comes through, is a small homeowner. I believe that it's very important, as you said, to find a way and to craft an ordinance which does differentiate between and is fair to all property owners in Radnor, that to have the general knowledge that not everyone's redeveloping, not everyone is a developer, and at some points throughout, as I've been doing these grading permits, it's always good to keep in mind the situations that come up when the ordinance does become onerous on them, and these are things that we hope to be able to alleviate when we write the new ordinance.
What is our definition of a redevelopment site?
$1,500 square feet.
Because it's stating here that it's for redevelopment sites. I mean, we could potentially add. No, I'm saying the change that we're making, add a condition that it only applies to a certain size lot, a certain.
Unless it's
amount.
already in the ordinance that we have.
The redevelopment comes with any development that requires demolition or removal of existing structures or impervious surfaces at a site and replacement with new impervious surfaces. Maintenance activities such as top layer grinding and repaving are not considered to be redevelopment. Interior remodeling and tenant improvements are also not considered redevelopment. So it would fall under when you're removing impervious and putting impervious in its place would be redevelopment.
Are you saying if you lift a sidewalk, you have to put in retention basin?
Depends on the square footage.
No, that's what I think Regina was asking.
Yes.
Is redevelopment 1,500 square feet or more?
Yes.
And is that in our existing ordinance?
Yes.
Okay.
So I guess I'm still a little concerned about that smaller size project. I'm hearing it from you too, that you're concerned about it, because that's what you see in the grading permits and things. If I want to put in a garage and part of that is replacing an old sidewalk with something new, then I'm over the number, and I can't show it's technically infeasible. I have a whole backyard, so now my backyard is a big stormwater management facility. That's not the intention here. So how do we avoid that? There's got to be a way that we can put some kind of limitation on this that will avoid that type of.
I think we should, I know we're bouncing to different scenarios, but we should look at what we're talking about in square footage. So 1,500 square foot is the trigger, right? So a 25-foot by 25-foot garage footprint is 625 square feet. And then you might have driveway, as you said, to get to it. So I don't want everybody to be under the impression that every time a shovel is turned over on a home, that this is our ordinance as it's written. The 0 to 500, as Regina knows, the 500 to 1,500. So, if you're going to replace your sidewalk, 1,500 square feet is a considerable amount of sidewalk. 500 square feet is the equivalent of 50 by 10. Matt's right. And Regina's right. This commission is right, and we're definitely going to take that in consideration. But this is what we're doing now, and yes, it will be more stringent. But again, that's for the over 1,500 square feet. So I just wanted to put that 1,500 square feet of new impervious into perspective. So, like I say, if you had a two-car garage, which let's call it 25 by 25, even 20 by 30, is 600 square feet. So we're not above that magic number, and then there's your driveway extension. So there's a relatively ample amount of work a homeowner can do without triggering what we call full-blown stormwater management over 15.
Yeah, I guess the way I check in, I'm concerned about all these things too, but I think the goal here is try and get this interim ordinance passed, and then fully vet all these other things. So in light of that, I think all these things, I think we should, I guess I would make a motion that we pass it, but let's have a list of our concerns to go along with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that position. I think everything that's been said here, and I come to the party with really no experience at all in stormwater management. I guess I'll learn a lot more in the next, I don't know, months, I suppose. But it does seem to me that Steve's correct, that we need to, make our concerns known, but also take care of this piece of paper that's before us.
So what I'm looking for now is a motion which lists those concerns. And as far as I'm concerned, the motion can be for or against recommending approval, as long as we get the right comments in, the things that we're concerned about. So who feels up to that?
I recommend that we approve the ordinance and that we have the following concerns. Concern A is that we would like to have an easier process for the small homeowner. We would like to also take a hard look at the 1,500 square feet and its impact on the majority of our small homeowners. And is the 1,500 the right number? I guess is the question.
Can we put can we put a clause in there that that there's a certain acreage, or that if you don't have meadow on your property, that, because there are big enough properties that, like,
How would you state it?
that the 25% of meadow in good condition will only be assumed where there is actually existing meadow on the property. In other words,
Yeah, I think that's getting too specific for this interim step.
Okay.
That's not really
Can I
going to
tell you
achieve the
what I'm trying
goal.
to do, and then maybe you can help me with the wording?
Yeah, we want them to consider this as they redraft the more long-term ordinance.
Okay, so what I'm trying to do is take the house that has, like the property that has a regular lawn, that doesn't have meadow, doesn't have like a forest on it, that doesn't actually have that condition ever existing. And so that it's more for the ones that are kind of in the outlying areas where they do have meadow, or rolling hills where they have meadow conditions existing, because
I don't think that's where we're intending here. I think the whole intention is, if this entire room is impervious and you're going to redevelop it, you have to consider a quarter of that room as meadow in good condition for your existing conditions, because at one point, none of it was impervious.
True, you're right.
If
So
you
that's
actually
the whole
have
intention.
real
So I don't think
meadow,
that goes with
then
our.
We're
Okay,
fine
well, then
with
can we
properties that actually have real meadow. That was
doesn't-
just
I don't
be
think-
assumed.
Well, then should we put a property size to it, so that it can be softer on the homeowners that are in town, like downtown areas?
I think that 1,500 is what Steve's saying is protecting us from hitting those types of properties.
Madam Chairman, I just have one question. Are these comments about the ordinance amendment for Sue to take down, or are these comments about the impending stormwater rewrite?
Rewrite. In my motion, they're for the rewrite.
I thought we were going to make a motion to recommend approval of these changes with the following comments. One, we're concerned about the doubling up effect in B1 and B2.
Right, for the ordinance amendment.
Two, we don't want it to be onerous on the homeowners with small projects that may just slightly be above 1,500. And we want to make sure there's an avenue by which they can request a waiver, even if it's just a grading permit. I thought that's the road we were going down.
Yeah.
I think we're getting, there's always that tendency to get very specific and try and design it right now. I don't think we can do that. All we can do is make some recommendations that we want the board to consider, and whoever is in charge of rewriting or revising the existing stormwater ordinance. I don't think we can sit up here and really fine-tune it at this stage. I think we're spinning our wheels.
But so the motion we're sending is to recommend approval, but not with conditions, with concerns.
Exactly.
Agreed.
Okay. So did somebody write down Regina's motion? I thought that was good.
This still impacts all the downtown, like the downtown areas of
Yes,
Wayne.
it
You know
does.
that.
And they're going to go get waivers and take care of it until the interim thing is done, and then we're going to have a new stormwater management zone code.
And they can also defer
is it gonna
development
take?
for
About a
6
year.
months, too.
So from whatever date this Board of Commissioners does it until a year from now or so, all the people that want to do projects above 1,500 are going to have to deal with this, even if they're in downtown Wayne or North Wayne or.
They do have recourse in granting the variance. So it's not like they're totally.
They're still dealing with this now, too. I mean, there's still those issues that come up with small projects under the existing ordinance.
Isn't there a clause in there also that if you reduce your impervious cover by 20%, you don't have to meet those peak reductions? Is that right, Steve? You have an option of meeting those peak reductions or reducing your impervious cover by 20% or more.
I think we have the message from the Planning Commission that you're really concerned about how this is going to impact people that are on, the 4,000 square foot lots and the 5,000 square, and the six.
Okay, I'm
Yeah,
going
we just don't want to catch anyone incidentally
Right.
it's not intended for. So I think that we want to express the concern about, it could be any development in that B2 district, because that could be a difficult situation, reducing those peak runoff rates on top of having to use the 25%. So as long as everyone's comfortable with that there is a waiver process. Is there anything else that we wanted to add?
I just have one more comment.
Yeah.
A lot of the properties that are in some of these downtown areas have been backfilled soils. They don't perk well anyway. So you're trying to turn it to meadow. Where are you going to catch all that? I mean, I guess that goes back to put a waiver in, but
You're not going to be able to
infiltrate it.
to do an ordinance which addresses every unique situation of every lot. Unfortunately, ordinances are designed to catch everybody in the net. And then you have to have a realistic way to, if people have a hardship or technologically, they can,
Okay, I'm going to ask that we wrap this up. Could Regina, please, we already had public comment. Regina, would you like to restate your ordinance, your motion, please?
Well, the first concern was that the
recommend
combination. Oh, well.
We recommend approval given the following concerns.
Or unless you don't. Well, Steve made the actual motion.
Okay, you know what?
I have 4 or 5 items I wrote down.
Well,
You know what, then, why don't you
read back
we
to us.
recommend approval of the ordinance with the following concerns.
Consider the small homeowner and the small lots and the impact on those homeowners. Steve mentioned consider or look at the 1,500 square foot limitation and whether that's the right number, whether that can be modified. Look at the waiver procedure. make sure-
Your mic isn't on.
Look at the waiver procedure and make sure that that's realistic for a homeowner that's got a hardship or another issue. And Regina, you mentioned the B1 and B2 doubling up effect in the ordinance on, I guess, any lot owner. And that was it.
Thank you, Steve, that was excellent. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you very much. We're going to take care of another housekeeping item before we go to our last agenda item. I want to remind everyone that we have a meeting scheduled on June 17th, which I believe is a Tuesday. That's a special meeting so that we can have ample time to look at the plans that came in for the Art Drazen site. That will be for next month. Our next regular meeting is July 7th. What we would like to do is choose a date in July as a possible special meeting, because CIDC is coming back now. So we may need also ample time to discuss that, and we'll have a lot of, I'm sure, lively discussion. So, Sue, should we talk now about a date, or do you want me just to alert people and then you can email them, or what do we do?
Buildings available.
So I just let everybody know that we're going to need to schedule a tentative second meeting in July. Now, if whatever the following meeting is a very light meeting, we'll combine and have it at the regular meeting if possible. But because we know how much time it takes to go through the CIDC proposals, that we'll have the extra meeting if we need to. So Sue will get back to us with possible dates and to see who's in town when. All right?
Quick question. Is Monday the 7th?
I believe that it is.
Is that the July 4th holiday?
We celebrate the 4th on the 4th.
We're celebrating on the 4th.
Okay.
Okay.
There's no applicant in the room.
Okay.
Just commenting.
Thank you. We have one additional item. Did we lose our applicant?
There's somebody outside.
Oh, okay. Jim, would you mind? Thank you.
But I still feel like I have a bitter taste in my mouth from the planned institution, failed attempt to revise the planned institution zoning. And I think the reason that failed is there was a disconnect between what was the Radnor Township's initiative versus the consultant's initiative.
All right, so as we
did anyone
start
else
the
feel
process,
that?
yes.
But I would rather not wait and have something presented to us that's completely in a different direction than we're headed. Why not take the time now to send comments like Elizabeth that we are not in favor of that, the fact that you changed the surface of your patio, it counts as new impervious.
Regina,
But I don't
Things
want
like
to
that.
send those comments until we've had our Stormwater 101 meeting.
That would be a good time to do it, though. But
Yeah,
I think
maybe right
waiting,
after that.
waiting until the whole thing's rewritten and then making comments on it's going to make it very difficult because then you're going to say, well, how does that compare to what we have now? And
Regina, aren't you generating stuff all the time out of Stormwater Advisory?
we are not consulted on that stormwater ordinance revision.
Well, you will be.
I'm sorry,
Well, I just asked Regina, when she was saying now's the time to make comments, and I said, isn't Stormwater Advisory making comments? And
on the
Regina's-
next agenda, at their previous meeting, I did get comments from them on the ordinance amended, and at the next meeting, that will also be a topic.
That's just for the interim measure.
Correct.
What I'm saying is I would rather have an avenue by which residents, board members, developers even, have an opportunity to provide comments before we totally rewrite the stormwater ordinance and then
you want to
get down that same road we went down last time and got nowhere with. And spent, how many times did we meet here? How many times did we give up our evenings to come here and achieve nothing?
Okay. All right. So we are going to move on to our final agenda item, which is the zoning hearing board discussion on appeal by the Radnor Chester Road Group. Is the applicant ready?
This is modified from what you had seen probably several months ago. Okay, so you will recall last time when we were here, we were requesting, we came to the board, we were asking for height variances, and we also had a large portion of this project in the residential area. We've now revised the plan. The zoning board actually turned that plan down. We revised the plan, so that's why we're showing you basically our revised plan now. See it that well, and I hope you have. I think you may have something there.
Did we just receive this tonight?
Yes. Yeah.
That makes
Okay, then we have not looked at
extremely
it.
difficult.
Okay, I'll go through it.
Okay.
Yeah, you've seen it before, so. This is 252 Radnor Chester Road. It's the existing office building across from Raider Road. You know, that's now next to the pads where the restaurants are. You follow me?
Oh, this is where the parking lot was going to go next to the residential area?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, got it. So what we have now, this is 240 Radnor Chester, which is an existing office building, basically 1.5 stories, I would say. Shelley, is that right? And in there now is Mainline Health. Mainline Health is now in there with their administrative offices. Actually, the hope is that Mainline Health will move all their administrative offices to this site if this building addition is approved. And then also you have this building here, and then you have down in this corner, you have an existing old office building. Yeah, old stone house that's been used as an office building for years now. That is and that is in the residential area, so it's not conforming as to the use. That is being demolished, and actually now the new proposed plan has nothing new in the residential area. Actually, with the building being demolished, there's no additional parking being added. There's nothing additional at all going in the residential area. We're keeping the residential area exactly the same way as it is, except for substantial buffering, which we'll show you in one of the plans. So right there, you see what the existing building looks like right now. I think you're all familiar with it. I think this may have been the old either PennDOT or Burroughs building back in the day. Do you know, Doug? I forget which one it was, but Burroughs, was it? Okay. And then this is that old, the residential house that has been used as an office building, which is right on Radnor Chester Road. As I mentioned, this is proposed to be demolished.
Is that across the street?
The open space. It's right next to it. Raider Road, Borough, the old building, and then right next to it is this building.
It's an old stone house.
It's an old
Directly,
stone house.
if you leave the high school, it's that old stone house. It's
So if I drive up and the soccer field's on my right.
Correct.
And then the entrance to the, back entrance to the school.
Right.
Okay.
Office building on your left.
On the left is the office building.
Right, and then right after that office building is this stucco building. So really, on the left, you have, as you're driving up Radnor Chester Road with the soccer field on the right, you have TD Bank, then the strip sandwich, what's it called, Johnny's something or whatever now. There's like 3 or 4 restaurants in there that are brand new. Then the office building, and then the stucco building across the street from the high school property.
Do we have any memos from staff on this application? Did somebody look at this?
I don't think.
I think Amy Kaminsky might have a few comments about the driveway's not going to line up with.
Hang on, I just want to know if we received any comments from staff.
No.
And yet you're asking us to,
This is a recommendation before they go to the zoning hearing board.
This is just your comments. Basically, what
this
happens.
is from our staff.
Yeah, Julia, what happens, my understanding is that you guys make comments. I don't even know if it's a recommendation.
Well, we
I
like to
think you
make comments, and we like to know what we're making the comments
Right.
about.
I understand. But I'm saying I think that's the theory. And within the last couple of years, they said any item that goes before the zoning hearing board that requires a land development in the future, if approved, should come here first.
But everything that comes here first shouldn't just come the night of the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
We need time to look at the plans, we need time to go through the submitted materials, and we prefer to have some comment from our staff so that we have an idea of what the important issues are, so that we can read it and think about it before we're asked to make comments.
Okay.
Because we're in the dark.
Right.
And just another question, is this going to Delaware County Planning Commission too?
It would go, if the zoning approval was approved for the land development, it would go to Delaware County Planning.
Procedurally, under the zoning ordinance, under the zoning hearing board section, it says, this is 280-142B, Planning Commission review, appeals going to the zoning hearing board, which involve a subdivision or land development, come here for an advisory opinion recommendation. You're supposed to get a sketch plan and provide comments to the zoning hearing board.
So why did that not happen? Why are we doing this differently?
I'll let Mr. Cornelia answer that question. We all got this tonight, right?
Well, the staff put it on the agenda, and the staff knows what we have. So I'm asking the staff, why is this like this? I'm sorry.
Could I make a comment on this while we're waiting for them to figure it out? I think one of the reasons why we should make somewhat of, well, actually not make somewhat, but make an intelligent decision on this, because nobody reviews this stuff for the zoning board. There's no engineer that reviews it or anything like that. It's strictly looking at boundary lines. So if there is an issue with road lineups or parking issues. Zoning hearing board basically gets it that night too, and there's no staff member for the township that reviews from a engineering standpoint. So I think it's good that we have educated input on this and have some comments from the township before we make a comment on it, because we're flying by the seat of our pants then, same way maybe the zoning board is, except for the legal issues involved with them.
That's why I feel like that we should make a motion, or a motion should be made to table this until we have that information.
Well, see,
When's the hearing,
that's a
Nick?
problem, because the hearing, unless we're going to have a hearing before, it's the third Thursday of
June.
June.
That's why it came to this commission, because of, if that hearing is scheduled. But I fully understand, and staff does have concerns with this because of a proposed traffic signal we wish to put in there. So there are issues, and we have not had time to review this. Literally, it came today.
Okay, when is the zoning hearing board meeting?
Third Thursday. I noticed you have a special meeting scheduled on, which would be 2 days before. I'm not certain if there's any other agenda on that.
Is that the 18th,
17th.
17th?
That's
Yeah.
our Drawson.
That was solely for our Drossen. That was the thought.
I'm not sure if you want to hear, about a year ago, we met with the property owner and with PennDOT and with the school district to start talking about a traffic signal at Radnor Road. And it was my understanding that this parcel would be taking access through the traffic signal, and the property owner was very concerned about queuing and stacking. So I'm very surprised to see that the plan now is no longer taking access through that traffic
Yeah,
signal.
there's still, I think that's still the intent. Shelley, do you want to address that?
No, I'd rather not do that right now, because I wanted to make a decision first whether or not we're going to do this before we ask everybody to start talking about it. Now, I'm just asking our board, do you want to continue with this and start from the beginning and have Nick take us through everything and try to learn it tonight? Or do you want to try to, does someone want to make a motion that we move this to the same night that we have our Art Drawson?
Well, I would make the motion that we move it to the June 17th meeting that we have scheduled. June 17th with the drive, we squeeze it in somehow.
And
As
that
long as we have some staff comments.
As long as we have staff comments,
Yeah,
yes.
Just a question, not to be a jerk or anything, but, I mean, if we're supposed to get this before zoning, and before we get it, we're supposed to have comments, then why are we under the gun?
You're
I mean,
right. It's not right.
why aren't you going to zoning the following month? And I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I mean, if that's the procedure, I mean, don't we have half the information?
Well, I don't want to throw anyone in the bus. Okay, that's the first step.
Nick, when did you file the application?
May 15th.
May 15th. So there's 60 days
Yeah,
to hold a hearing, right?
I know.
So if you go in the month of June and you don't have a recommendation from this planning commission, then the zoning hearing board may just say, we don't have a recommendation from the planning commission, come back in July, Mr. Cornelia.
That is correct. And it is, I'm just going to say now, it is no fault of the applicant that you didn't receive information, prior to this evening. You've seen this plan previously. You're going to see it. If it does get approved, you're going to have it on a land development process along with comments from Delaware County Planning Commission. We've unfortunately, Mr. Gross was delayed last month because I was away. I was out of the country, and so we couldn't schedule it last month for the zoning hearing board. So we're hoping to get it this month because he's under an agreement, and he has a contingency in that agreement, and part of the contingency is regarding timing. So that's why we're trying to.
Well, I guess is back to my earlier comment. If we kind of just drop the ball slightly, then I don't mind scheduling on the 17th, and I don't want the applicant to suffer if that's the case.
Scheduled before the zoning
That's just
hearing, we have
one person.
Yeah, if it's
Okay, as long as the board, I think that's a good idea, but
And
I
I
just
also
want
think
everyone to
we're going to be
recognize
doing a lot that night.
That night's going to be a big night, so.
Maybe we hear a presentation, we don't comment on it, and then we go revisit it with the comments from the township, and then have a discussion next time.
presentation
Yeah,
tonight.
no discussion, just a presentation.
The presentation, it'll be short. I mean,
Okay.
this evening, it shouldn't be that long. I'll just familiarize you with the plan again. Remember, you did see this previously, and then I know Amy has some comments. And
Okay, do
whether
I have
we
general
make the
agreement from the
comments
board to
now
proceed
or
that way?
whether Yeah, I know your
Yes.
comments are, so I'll ask Shelley to address that, all right? 15 minutes at tops. I mean,
Okay,
I'd
go.
be shocked if it was 15 minutes, okay. So, I went through what's the existing plan. And the old proposal, we were asking for a height variance, and we had much of the development in the PB district that has now been, or in the R1 district, it's now been removed out of the R1 district, and the entire building and the entire additional parking and the parking structure is all in the PB zoning district. And as a result of moving everything out, we were able to give a lot of buffering. As you see, I think on page 4 here, you see a line of buffering here. These trees, I believe, they're 25-foot-high trees at planting, and I believe there's 47 of them being planted along this to give this residential area to the east of this site a lot of buffer. But you also recall you have a split zoning district here. You have the R1 PB line, and then you have commercial development in here, and over here is where the residences are on Radnor Way. Actually, many of the office buildings, the Schiffer and Barraway buildings, actually closer to the Radnor Way residences than this proposed building is going to be located. But in any event, you have a long line of buffering here. Page 5 is just showing what the existing site looks like from Radnor Chester Road. Page 6 shows the elevation and architecturals of the proposed building, which again conforms with the height requirement. Page 7 shows a view looking west. Page 8 shows that same view with the buffer trees. Page 9 is just a site elevations showing the elevations and how it's lower than the adjacent properties. 810 shows the existing condition parking lot looking east. Page 11 shows the 25-foot high evergreen style trees that will buffer that view. Page 12 shows another view from Radnor Way. That's actually the residences on Radnor Way, which shows very little buffering, and you can see both the building and the parking structure, as well as the Radnor Financial Building. And then 13 again shows the buffering there. So in effect, what we're doing is and what we need relief on is building coverage, because what we could do, but since we have a tenant in the building and structurally it's not feasible, we could add another floor to the existing building and be in total compliance with building coverage and every other requirement. But we currently have Mainline Health in there in a long-term lease, and it's just not feasible to construct another addition to add an addition to this building. Therefore, we're asking for the zoning relief.
What conversations have you had with the residents?
Shelley's had several. Go ahead, Shelley.
In March, we had a town hall meeting. In April, we met with the residents. In May, I met with the residents. And the byproduct of what you're seeing today of the 47 spruces that are 25-foot screening, plus we're adding an additional 15 trees on Radnor Way for additional screening. So it's a total of about 60 some odd trees that are going in that are going to be minimum 25 foot in height.
Did they have concerns other than the plantings?
No, actually, they have their own meeting occurring within the next week, and I'm supposed to get feedback from the community. There's I think 6 residents that border our property, but basically we're enhancing their property values and their view. When they're looking west from their residences now, they are actually seeing commercial properties, ours being the least of the properties that they view. They actually see the Radnor Financial Center and, of course, the commercial properties, and they also see the high school lights. By our screening that we're putting in there, the density of the trees, they're going to be blocked 24/7, 12 months a year, because these are going to always be green. So as opposed to, it's very lush now. If you come to our property now, you'll see that the trees that are 25, 30, 40 feet tall are quite beautiful, and they do provide the screening that you would want to have 20 all year round, but unfortunately, they lose their leaves in November, and it looks barren. Our screening will provide for 24/7, 12 months a year screening.
Shelley, could you address, Amy has some comments regarding the roadway.
Yes, basically, what we've done, Amy, is that, and I did meet with Steve and Mr. Rice, and basically, we're taking this through two steps. The first step being the application that's presently before the board, and then the second step is that and I met with Leo as he was leaving tonight, just to go over it, is once you have finalized your plan as to the exact location, we're going to then come back in and ask to move the driveway to line up with Radnor Chester Road. We didn't want, it became a very cumbersome process by going to the zoning board with multiple changes that we're asking for the property. So we wanted to narrow it down to just what we need right now, the building coverage. The second step is going ahead and then moving the driveway to line it up with Radar Road. And we are undertaking that, whatever the improvements are for our site. And as I explained to Steve and Mr. Rice, whatever the improvements are for our site will be our undertaking, and we're willing to commit to that.
And
Well,
be willing
just
do-
to let you know, we've already made a submission to PennDOT on that signal permit plan with the assumption that your driveway was aligned based on the information we received from TPD, your traffic engineer.
Frankly, I didn't even know that application had been processed.
TPD was provided all the details on that because they were the ones that provided us with the survey data for your site.
Yeah, frankly, I know that I engaged TPD to do the study, and to provide, and I provided the information to Steve, I think 3 weeks ago. But I didn't know the current status of the application. I know that Leo told me that there was a plan out there, but I had no idea. I hadn't gotten the feedback. So if that is the case, then
Yes.
okay, then
Yeah, we had to submit it because you hadn't gotten a chance to move forward on your project yet. We actually had to create an interim signal under the premise that you may or may not be coming forward, because I didn't know what was going to happen to your project, and I was concerned with timing, because we're trying to get that signal constructed before the end of the summer.
Well,
So we submitted two plans to PennDOT. One was if you came forward with your project, and then we set up an interim, which actually costs the township a little bit more money, because we couldn't completely construct your side without knowing exactly what you were doing internally. But so we were anticipating you coming forward with that, and I'm not sure why they decided that the plan shouldn't have that driveway. So I would leave that up to them to.
frankly, we took it out because we didn't know what was happening. And as of 2 weeks ago, I still didn't know what was happening, so.
Well, Mr. Gross, our goal was always to get the signal installed for the start of the school year for the high school. We had trouble getting information from your engineer, and we had to move forward to try to keep that timeline. But that was always the goal in our many meetings with you, Mr. Burnaby, myself, and Amy Kaminsky, was to get the signal in for the school year. So that's why we had to move forward with lack of a better term, a temporary signal that we're going to install while all the other moving parts take place.
Well, if you remember, our plan that was before the zoning board in April had that location on there. We were denied. The impetus for us to be able to move that as part of the whole development plan, and we would gladly participate, be an active participant, but we need to be able to be assured that we're going to be approved, and that's basically where we're at. I mean, we need to be approved on the plan. If we're approved on the plan, then we'll be able to align it.
Amy, can you get us a memo about the concerns that you have for that traffic signal, and perhaps send it to us a few days before the 17th meeting after you all have had a chance to work this out better so that we know where we are?
Okay.
And we'll look at it, too. We'll
Could I
look at
get
it
some
on our end.
clarification? I'm not really sure why you were denied at zoning hearing, and if it was directly related to that driveway?
It was not.
So I'm not understanding why then.
It was more dealing with the building coverage and the height and the area in the residential. Amy, what I
Okay.
think we should let us go back and we will
Figure it out.
revisit it, okay?
I have a question. Did I understand you to say that you're limiting the height of the building to 1 story because there's a current tenant and it's not feasible to put a second story on, but you could put a second story on?
No, it's not feasible structurally also to put a second story on it.
I see. Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
we had, I think there's an exhibit, well, it's not in your packet, but we have an exhibit we have a report from a structural engineer as well.
So this would always be a one-story building
Yeah,
forever?
matter of fact, yeah, we're willing to condition, if we were receiving approval, that we would not do any other additions to this site, except for what is being proposed here.
All right.
So
You anticipated
in the future, we
my
would
next
not add
question.
anything.
Okay.
We're not going to be taking any motions tonight, but I will open it up to public comment if anybody has a public comment at this time. No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, board questions?
Are you tearing down the building that's there now when the new building is constructed and finished?
The existing office building?
Yeah.
No, not the,
Okay.
not,
So you're-
the old stucco building is being torn down.
Well, that's what I asked.
On Radnor Chester, that's the one we're referring to, yeah.
All right, so they are not in that building, they're in another building.
No. You have the main office building.
Yeah.
That's where Mainline Health is.
Oh, okay,
This one, I think this little house is tearing down.
okay.
And the reason you're tearing that down is because you've already got too much building coverage.
Yeah,
There's
we have too much
nothing
building
really
coverage
other
and-
than that.
Yeah, and well, also, it's non-conforming, so in effect, we're helping the situation by tearing down a non-conforming building in a residential zone, so we're giving the neighbors more buffering too. So there's sure, it's building coverage, but also by tearing it down, you're giving the neighbors more buffering and more coverage, and you're removing a non-conformity in the residential area.
Will you all be attending the early June meeting that the residents will be having?
I will not, I know Shelley is. Right?
No,
Go ahead.
We had a number of meetings with the residential community, and this meeting is, we've given them all the documents that you have now, and they want to meet among themselves to be able to discuss it. So they have, I've committed to sign a memorandum of understanding with them, and I've provided them a draft of the memorandum of understanding, and depicting basically what's on the documents and saying that we're willing to commit to this. And that includes foregoing, as Nick referred, we're willing to give up the right to build a 199,000 square foot building in lieu of accepting the 70,000 square foot building that we're requesting. So if we had, on the combined lot, we could actually build a 215,000 square foot building. If we were able to build a multi-story building where we're at now on our current site, we could actually go up to 199,000 square feet. We're going to forego the additional square footage that we could build on the property in return for being able to build what we want to build, which is the 70,000 square foot building now.
So you're going to have something, will it be available for the June 17th meeting?
I hope so.
Okay,
I hope
so
so. I
we'll be
hope I have
privy to
feedback
that
from the community.
information and response from the residents for that meeting.
Yes, I hope to have community response by then. Thank you.
Anybody have anything else?
Yes. I wasn't finished asking my question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so both of these buildings are going to be on there. I don't know if I'm being particularly dense or not, but I don't see how, this is the existing building, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And this is the building you're going to add, right?
I can't see Kathy.
It is, yes, somebody said. Okay. I don't see. Okay. I don't see where the existing building is shown on the new building.
Yeah.
Oh, not on that.
Kathy?
Yeah.
Right here.
That's what I was
Is the
handed.
existing building.
Okay, I don't have that. I have.
On page 4.
Oh, it's in the back.
It's in the back.
All right, then what is the one that is one of one?
That's the existing condition.
That may be existing conditions.
No, it doesn't show the building.
That's existing.
Several of the plans are labeled one of one. You can't go by that.
That is the existing stucco commercial.
Oh, that little house there.
That little house.
That little historic house.
That little house.
Sure, okay. Gotcha. All right. The clouds are disappearing.
Now that, if you look at picture number 12, the house you're going to demolish is in the far left side, right? You can actually see it. Is that right?
Is that his shop? I don't know. Is that the house being?
Yes,
Yes,
that
you're
is
right.
the house, yes.
That's a commercial, but yes. Oh.
It's actually used as an office
Yeah.
now. There's
I already
an
asked that
accountant
last time.
first floor benefits company.
How long is storm
All right, then my next question is, now that I can see where I'm going, where is the parking for this building going to be?
It's in the parking structure. You have existing parking, and then you have a parking structure in the rear. That's all. Right here.
Oh, okay, gotcha. It's not a flat parking lot, it's an existing
Right,
structure.
yeah. It's an existing
Okay,
parking. And they're adding a couple levels to it.
all right. And how many levels will that be?
It's no more than 38 feet, so I think in some areas it's 4 levels, other areas it may be 5 levels.
Okay. All right, thank
The
you.
height is still no higher. It's conforming to code as to height.
And how are you on impervious?
We're less impervious than existing.
Really? Wow.
Because basically, remember in this piece here where the existing office building is and parking? over here?
Look at that picture.
Oh, I'm sorry. In this area here, there's parking being removed and that building's being removed. That's why, basically, that we're decreasing impervious, because that's now green.
I understand now. All right, thank you.
Okay, let's see if anybody else has any general questions about what's going on, please ask those questions. If you have very specific things, let's wait until we all have a chance to review the materials. Anybody have anything else?
I guess my general comment is that I hope that by the time we see you again, that lining up the driveway is resolved, and we can all be happy to recommend.
And if you might mention to the neighbors if any of them could come to the meeting and let us know that they're very excited about this project, that would be wonderful.
Or they can submit something.
Yeah, all right. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, just real quick, I think on Regina's comment for the stormwater ordinance rewrite, we'll set up an email address that anybody, public, staff, boards can write into, and I'll just forward that list of emails of people's concerns. I think that's a great idea. So we'll get that
Okay, thank you.
together, like with some kind of a timeline, then I'll just forward that to Gannett, and they'll have that. I think that's a great suggestion on her part to keep moving forward that way.
Okay, thank you.
As a question, we talked about Stormwater 101. Are we talking about possible dates for doing that?
I think I'd like to shoot them out. It's like Sue Jones said for the other meeting, we have to make sure there is a room available, and we'll have to do the same thing for this committee. Do we do it before a regularly scheduled meeting, or do we just do it on a different night or afternoon? So I think we need to shoot some dates out to you folks.
Okay, that'd be great. I think we're good. Move to adjourn. Oh, is there additional public comment? Jim, did you have something you wanted to say? Please step up.
I apologize for trying to comment after the fact, but it's an
Oh, that's
ongoing
fine.
effort. I just wanted to mention that the Delaware County Planning Commission report seems to emphasize that there's a lack of regulation, I hate that word, about a riparian buffer. And I think Radnor's ordinances are in general lacking in that. And that's also, and I'm sure you know all this, but I want to emphasize that because we all know that treatment of riparian can actually help the problem a lot. I mean, we're talking about Radnor having a lot of bald banks, and that can be changed. Second of all, I think it is a pretty technical ordinance. And while soil could be seen as troublesome, and of course, who wants that kind of particularity with the residents of any township? It's a huge administrative cost. But if Radnor has any big splotches of certain soil types, yes, because we all know that from St. David's train station up to Susquehanna Bank, literally a mile long, that's a bog. It's a former bog. And there's probably a soil type all the way back from Lancaster Pike over, from Aberdeen and Little Chicago all the way over to Windermere. That might be one kind of soil. More so, and I'm of course talking about the future and theoretically, but if this is, and it appears to be a really specific ordinance, why not have a tier that's tied to either a small scope or medium scope troubled area. People who drain into the immediate Gulf Creek should have more of a responsibility. They could have a higher tier of responsibility compared to people farther down on Shimoni who drain into a wide open Gulf Creek that goes right down to the Schuylkill. And it seems to be most of the people who drain into Darby Creek, whatever that is in the Delaware County side, aren't providing problems, whereas businesses draining into the region around the Kmart all the way south to Donna Lane are contributing to flooding around that area. I don't think that would be a big deal to have geographically related tiers, because we're talking about a very specific ordinance, and people, if you're going to make it economically equitable, do so. And if I could just add, the ordinance seems to be hugely administratively top-heavy. And I wish you wouldn't even pass it unless, I hope the revamp will ignore that. You won't have any room to really be equitable at all, ultimately.
Thank you, Jim. Is there any other public comment?
I think that Jim raised some important issues. When we look at our stormwater ordinance, it doesn't necessarily have to be one size fits all. And if you're looking at different areas of the township, they can achieve different goals. If you're looking in South Wayne and expecting to solve a flood problem where it occurs, it's not going to happen. So we need to incorporate that into not only our planning for our funding for projects, but also into our ordinance as well, because you got to back it up with the funding, but you have to require it in the ordinance. And partnering with available space and tax dollars. So I think you made a very good point, Jim.
Well, I think we're going to have a very good time working on this stormwater ordinance, aren't we? We're all looking forward to that. Did anybody have anything else? Yeah. Okay. Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.